Well, I got into healthcare law by accident. I was a litigator at a firm in Phoenix and doing all kinds of litigations. And a very wealthy Phoenician was in the process of getting his third divorce and dying. And he wanted to make sure that his will would be upheld. So a friend of his advised him to leave substantial gifts to some charities. And he made a substantial gift to St. Joseph's Hospital in Phoenix, which was a client of our firm. I was assigned to handle the will contest action and got a good result for the client. And at that point, the administrator and I hit it off well. And he basically said to me, if you'll make a commitment to learn healthcare law, I'll make a commitment to teach you how hospitals work. And I said, that sounds great to me. And with that conversation, my career changed 90 degrees.
And what was it before that? What were you going to do?
Litigation, insurance defense litigation, and various other kinds.
So that's how it was, it sounds like, for a lot of you guys. I mean, it wasn't really a specialty in those days, was it?
That's correct, it wasn't. The next thing that happened after we got the will contest action resolved, the same administrator called me and said, I think I need a lawyer. I said, why do you need a lawyer? He said, well, we're opening our new heart facility next week. I said, yeah, I read about it in the paper. And we've hired from Dr. DeBakey a leading heart surgeon named Dietrich, and he's going to be on the cover of Life magazine in an article next week in which he calls all the other doctors in Phoenix a bunch of quacks. I said, that doesn't sound too good. And he says he has a contract that is very unique, and I can't talk more about the contract. But at the end of that conversation, I said, yeah, I think you need a lawyer. And I got in my car and went out to the hospital, and I've been working with hospitals ever since.
And you were with Catholic Healthcare West for a long time.
Yeah, I was with Jenny Strauss and Salmon in Phoenix for 23 years, and then I was general counsel for Catholic Healthcare West for 17 years.
So you were an in-house hospital attorney, basically.
Well,
Is that how you describe it?
Outside when I was in Phoenix and inside when I was here in the Bay Area.
And as an inside attorney, what special perspective did that give you, would you say?
Well, you had to, first of all, I'm at a faith-based institution. They operate in a very different fashion than for-profit institutions. And I'm not a Catholic, I'm a Methodist, so I had to get used to functioning in a Catholic environment, which the Sisters of Mercy were happy to educate me on. Your goals and objectives are somewhat similar to any business enterprise, but very different in other respects. So it was an education, a joyful education, and quite a transition from what I had done before. And I'm very glad I did it.
And during your career, health law has evolved incredibly. How would you describe the evolution, and what were some of the significant milestones in your view?
Well, health law is an exciting area to practice law in. First of all, I've been a lawyer for 54 years, and I tell young people that are interested in going to law school, in the 54 years, there's been 11 boring days. Now, that may be an exaggeration. There might be 12, but not many. It's relevant. It's never been more relevant than it is right now, because this dialogue between those who think health care is a right and ought to be provided to everybody, and the others who think it's a commercial commodity that ought to be bought and sold on the marketplace, is not a new dialogue. It's been going on all of my career. It's just more visible in the last 8 years, to pick a number. So it's relevant, it's exciting, it's a people business. If you're a people person, then practicing healthcare law can be exciting, because you deal with interesting people on your side of the table and interesting people on the other side of the table. And I have no regrets. I've been very fortunate.
You joined the American Academy of Hospital Lawyers in the mid-'70s, right?
Correct.
And how would you describe the culture of that association?
Well, first of all, it was simply what was designated as a personal membership group of the American Hospital Association. So we were like a large committee of the Hospital Association. But we had no staff. All the employees were employees of AHA. We had no money, because all the money belonged to AHA. And there was not always unanimity of thought as to what our goal and function ought to be. AHA thought that we should be lobbying for hospital perspective, and as our group grew, we thought we should have a broader scope, considering representation of physicians and health plans, and so the dynamic changed over the years.
Membership was limited.
Membership in the early days was limited to hospital lawyers only. And then that's part of the merger. When we talked to the national health lawyers, the scope changed, in theory at least.
There was an interesting development in the lead up to the merger before that took place. Tell us about that.
Well, I became president in the summer of 1995. So that means I was president-elect 94, 95. In that time period someplace, a fellow named Jerry Peters and I had lunch. He's a tax lawyer that was doing some work for us, and he was on the board of the National Health Lawyers. Well, as we talked, we asked ourselves the question, why are there two organizations that are essentially the same? The structure's different, but the goal and function is essentially the same. Aren't we asking all of our friends to pay dues twice, to go to two sets of meetings? This doesn't seem to make a lot of sense. So that actually lunch conversation is what started the whole ball rolling on the merger.
And then you gave a talk to the National Health Lawyers Association in Florida, and there was advanced this a little bit further, correct?
Okay, right. I discovered that soon after that luncheon, I was invited to give a talk at one of the National Health Lawyers meetings in Florida, and went down and gave my little talk, and had dinner with Jim Hall, who was then the president of National Health Lawyers, and several of the board members. And the conversation continued. At that point, we weren't using the word merger. You know, how could we collaborate better? How could we do this job better? And there was a warm reception at their board level to continuing the conversation. Plus, we had an example. For years, Lynn Homer from the National Health Lawyers and J.D. Epstein from the Academy had been running the Medicare Law Institute, a great success, and a good example of what we could do together. So at the end of my Florida visit, we decided to continue talking to each of our boards.
And you met again at the facility at the airport in Dallas.
Now that's a clandestine meeting. Yeah, several of our board members and several of the National Health Lawyers board members met at that hotel that's on the Dallas airport grounds, and we had dinner and talked. And that was the first time leadership of both groups came together. And I didn't know how it was going to turn out. I had Glenn Reed with me, Gary Island, and a couple of others. And I had no idea what the reaction would be. So we finished our little meeting and had a brief chat among ourselves, and much to my, partly to my surprise, much to my satisfaction, the consensus was, let's keep talking. There's something good we can do here.
Why was the meeting clandestine?
Well, we hadn't told anybody else. We were thinking of pursuing a collaboration. We hadn't told the rest of our board. As you can, well.
So what was the biggest challenge? Were there concerns? Were there, I mean, you saw opportunities, obviously.
The biggest challenge, from my perspective, was the process of exiting American Hospital Association. First of all, that was a political issue. I mean, we had been part of that organization for, 20 years, maybe longer. And leaving the Hospital Association was difficult for some people to accept. Some people thought we should stay there because the relationship had many positive aspects. The general consensus, however, was let's find a better way to serve our constituency, and we think we could do that independent of AHA.
Constituency being attorneys who were members. Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah, attorneys who, well, there was one initial point we had to get over, and that is we were still, at that point, the Academy is still limited to membership by lawyers only. National Health Lawyer was much broader. CPAs and specialists in healthcare issues were eligible for membership. And it took a little adjustment for the AHA folks to adjust to the idea of broadening out the membership. We got over that hurdle fairly quickly, and it was a very beneficial change in my view.
What were the positives of staying just with the AHA?
Well, AHA is a wonderful organization, very strong in Washington, D.C. I think those who were in the academy who worked at hospital associations on a state level were uneasy about departing from the mothership. But those of us in independent practice were ready to move on.
So what were the differences? How would you describe the differences between the two organizations?
Well, there was a bit of a cultural difference. First of all, we thought there probably was huge overlap in the attorney membership. We thought a lot of lawyers would be members of both groups. Later on, we did an analysis, and that turned out to be right. I think it was something in excess of 60% overlap. The national health lawyers, to their credit, were very serious-minded folks. When they would have their meetings, they would have the meeting, they'd do the education, they'd get the heck out of there and go back to work. The academy was a little more socially oriented, partly for fun and partly because we thought it served a purpose. We thought that having some fun with your colleagues, having some fun with people that you wanted to get acquainted with, not only lightened the mood of the organization, but you found out a lot in the informal sessions that you wouldn't have known in the formal sessions. So when the merger came about, we enabled the national health lawyers folks to lighten up a bit and have some more fun.
And it added to the networking?
Absolutely. I mean, half of what you learn at these meetings comes during the coffee break and the dinners and the social time, because what makes healthcare law so interesting is it's changing rapidly. The business model is changing rapidly. You want to know what other business models are working and maybe more importantly, what's not working. And you find that out in conversations with your colleagues. It's also helpful to know what the regulatory agencies are doing, and you're not going to find that out in a formal presentation. You might, but you can find a lot more out during the cocktail hour.
And the AHA used to have a prom, is how some people described it.
Yes, we did have the prom, which a lot of us, which I detested because I'm just not a prom guy. But I think I've been retired 15 years now. I think the prom has gone away now in favor of social activities that are a little looser and a little less stiff.
How would you describe the culture that resulted from the merging these two organizations?
Oh, I think it's first rate. It's the old phrase, the best and the brightest. It has the best and the brightest in this profession. It has leaders from government, which is a new twist, and they play a very important role. I just think I'm selfish because I had a role in merging them, but I think the resulting organization is just outstanding.
Mm-hmm. And the mission is education. How would you describe the mission, what the organization does?
Well, the primary thing is education. Healthcare law changes rapidly, so if you're 6 months out of date on what the current developments are, you're not providing your clients competent advice. So education is the first thing. But networking is almost equally as important. You need to know who's doing what, who are the experts. If you have to find other legal talent, you want to know who's getting good results, who's billing their client at a fair rate, those kinds of things. So it's education, networking, and having a role in the healthcare dialogue that's going on nationally. The healthcare lawyers, I think, play an important role in helping government leaders understand that healthcare actually is very complex.
And decide policy. I mean, don't government people come to the association at times for advice? And
I don't know if they come for advice, but they come to share their views, which is about the same thing. But the Justice Department, the Federal Trade Commission, attorneys general of the states, it's important that there be a conversation between both groups so that not everything is a battle. You know, there are a lot of issues that we can work out if we're talking to each other.
Can you tell us a little bit about David Greenberg?
I received the David Greenberg Award a few years after the merger because of the merger, but I never, I must admit, I never met him. So I know him only by reputation, which is good. I think he started both organizations, as I understand it.
You talked about, a little bit about your advice for young attorneys. What is your advice for young attorneys?
Well, first of all, if you're going to be a healthcare lawyer, stay current. As I've said earlier, if you're 90 days behind the curve, you're out of date. There used to be a good expression, you want to be able to skate to where the puck's going to be. Well, you can only do that if you're taking advantage of the resources that are available. And that's just not the printed, that is the printed word now on the internet, which is amazing. My old firm in Arizona, I think, spent $10,000 a month keeping a library up, so we would be current there. Well, now you do it for a few hundred a month with the internet services. But stay current, get involved. I believe there's huge advantages to the individual by participating in the events of the American Health Lawyers or the ABA Health Forum. By participating, you learn more than you give, and that's what it takes to make a success.
As health law continues to evolve, how do you see the future?
Oh, it's great, because healthcare and the complications of delivering healthcare is not going to go away. No matter what happens on the national level with healthcare reform and healthcare bills, people need healthcare. We get sick. We need healthcare services that are both good and affordable. So I think the future in practicing healthcare law is wonderful. I wouldn't be a bit reluctant to encourage someone who's a people person. You have to be a people person to make it work. But if that's your orientation, I think healthcare law is a wonderful place to be.
On this 50th anniversary of the American Health Lawyers Association, what key moments stand out to you in the history of this group?
Well, in the early days, there were people like Jay Hedgepeth, Jim Ledlam, Don Byerly, the first creators of what became the American Academy of Healthcare Attorneys. Those people came together with leadership at AHA to form this, what turned out to be the Academy. And I think because they put it on a sound basis, intellectually, ethically, it was off to a good start. So I'd say the very beginning group was a key point. I think the Medicare Law Institute by Lynn Homer and J.D. Epstein was a key point, because again it showed we could work together. With all due humility, I think the merger of the two organizations was a key point. Included in that same time frame is technology. As we were preparing to leave AHA, we recognized that the delivery of intellectual property was going to be an internet digital process. And we were very keen on trying to be at the front end of that process, and I think we were, and that the American Health Lawyers is today. It's remarkable what I can go up to my den and plug into the internet and find out.
And so what would you say to this association on the conference's 50th anniversary?
Welcome. Have a great time. Learn a lot. Associate with your colleagues. Make new friends. Associate with people you didn't know before. Be hospitable to those in the other branches of healthcare law, like managed care plans and the government and the physicians, and go home a better person.
You say you have to be a people person to be a good healthcare lawyer. Tell me why.
Well, first of all, the subject matter of what you're dealing with are people, getting people good care. But you find yourself representing Well, what's the makeup of the clientele? Physicians, highly educated nurses, hospital administrators who are highly educated. All three of those groups are not only smart, educated people, highly motivated. So you've got to be able to keep up with them, or a little more than that. The subject matter. If you're handling medical staff controversies, of course, you're dealing with very human issues of the quality of care and a physician's practice. But if you're dealing with a merger, it's what's the employment model going to look like? Are people going to lose their jobs? Are you going to be hiring more people? So it is, in my view, I mean, that's what made it exciting for me. But in my view, every major decision you make affects a lot of people, so you better do it right.